What's up, to Groot? Welcome to your weekly NBA Bizcast, where we provide you with the information that you need to know. We provide weekly highlights in tech, business, sports, and any other interesting stories. Listen while you work, study, drive, or on your break. Today is Thursday, June 20th. We're going to go right over to Tunde with tech. What's up, Tunde?
Hey, guys. If you remember last week, which the episodes went up recently, but I apologize for the delay, we talked a little bit about a product called the Xbox One and how Microsoft had endeared itself to gamers and people around the world with very aggressive DRM policies. Well, they've done pretty much a complete reversal, or a 180 as some would say, on the policy within the last week. Microsoft has now decided that they will sell the discs and allow the DRM to be on the discs, meaning it'll be just like you always had. You put in the disc into the player, the game plays. If you take out the disc, the game does not play. The disc itself verifies you own the game. You no longer have to do download only. There's no longer any online check-in. You don't have to be online every 24 hours. They removed basically all their draconian policies that they'd put in place. But while they were there, I don't know if it was kind of to spite customers or just a general logistical reason, they also removed all of the bonus features for having digital copies. So now even if you have a digital copy, you choose not to buy the disc, you don't get game sharing between friends. You can't transfer games to people on your Xbox Live list. There's no family membership where all family members can play the same game regardless of their physical location and what Xbox they're playing on. And they also removed any possibility for transferring or for selling licenses for cheaper than what the actual games would cost. So they've gone back to the classic model, the same that Sony is doing, because gamers were angry.
I wonder if it's not just the gamers, too, who might be advantaged by putting it back to the disc platform, right? I mean, the game developers, they rely on sales, and one-time sale of a game is a limit that is put in by the digital copies. So if you go back to that platform, people can actually lose their discs and have to replace them. So it might be a benefit for them as well, because I don't think piracy in the video game world is that big. I mean, yes, there is Xbox modding, there is PlayStation modding, but that is such a small subset of the overall gaming community that I don't even think DRM's a solution to a problem that has become big yet.
Well, actually, if you read a little bit online, the biggest gainer everyone's actually talking about is GameStop and EB. Because before they were going to make no money. Now they're going to go back to their system where they abuse children and convince them to trade in games for $12 they're going to sell for $60 later. So they're actually the biggest gainer of this. The game developers, it's mixed. You're right on the one hand that digital copies is only one sale, but at the same time, they don't make any money off of GameStop's used game sales. So they're kind of happy also in when there's only digital, because it means there's only one sale and they get the money and no one else gets a second cut.
Fair.
I'm looking forward to the impending lawsuit now that we've named GameStop and EB as abusers of children.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Maybe we should. They have some really powerful legal. When I said that, I meant that they are a great bastion of the community of gaming and help everyone enjoy console games.
Do you think they were trying to make it digital, though, because that's where the world of DVDs has gone? People don't want to buy physical copy of a DVD anymore. Everyone wants the digital version. And I wonder if they were just trying to predict some sort of future trend that they were trying to get on top of that digital world before PlayStation got on it, for example.
I think there's a ton of reasons behind it. Like, if you look at that angle, if you go into the digital only, there's the advantage of that it's cheaper. It costs them nothing to give you a digital game where the download, the bandwidth, you're paying for the internet to download it. Whereas the disc, they actually have to print and press the disc. And keep in mind that now they're using Blu-rays. They used to use DVDs, which was low license. Blu-rays are owned by Sony, so they're going to have to pay Sony every time they print a disc. Whereas if they would have gone digital, they would have been saving even more money. I think it's, realistically, they were doing a combination of trying to prevent you from stealing games and saving themselves money, and now they're going to have to pony up a bit more money and find a way to prevent people from stealing games still.
Either way, I think, kudos to Microsoft on the quick response on, churning out the Xbox 180. But I think at the end of the day, this is concerning. If I was a Microsoft stakeholder, I'd be sincerely concerned about this product's future if there's such a significant change. 4 months out on the release date? They want it out for Black Friday.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a chapter in our operations textbook about project management that starts out with Xbox and the extreme complicated process that was part of bringing it to market. And this is an even more competitive landscape with the PlayStation 4 coming out at the same time, which wasn't the case with Xbox. And they've clearly decided to diverge from what they were originally planning. So I don't know how they're feeling about that, but I'd be worried if I had money in the company.
Even the one thing, aside from the technical spec changes, that they can't reverse is what I think is the irreparable damage done to the perception and the reputation. You're not going to be able to change, like we spoke about that PS4 viral video that had almost 10 million hits within a couple days when they were illustrating how they're going to share games with their consumers. That won't be able to reverse easily. The perception that they've created now, this is when you're backtracking instead of being progressive and making those statements right from the beginning. They've had a lot of negative press in the last couple of weeks, and I think that's probably going to be even more detrimental than any technical specs that they need to do.
Yeah, I think to kind of wrap this up, it's a surprise to see a big company step back like this and say, okay, the consumers are really going to be mad at us and we're going to put them first, which is kind of a good thing. I think if they ever do want to, because right now, even with doing that, they're still behind Sony. If they want to actually become on level playing ground, they need to do both. They need to have it so that people who want digital subscriptions and the advantages of not having physical media, the cheaper costs, can have that. And then people who want physical media, who don't have the internet or are afraid of you constantly watching them and making like check-ins online, can have the alternate solution. Right now, they're doing one or the other. And I think in the future, if they can do both, then they can actually catch up in terms of feature parity.
All right, let's head over to Alex with some business news.
All right, I have some news coming to you from the soon-to-be less active and exciting realm of United States quantitative easing policy. Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke has announced today that the end is in sight for the largest and most controversial fiscal policy in United States history. They will be tapering off the $85 million monthly bond purchases with an aim to halt purchases in mid-2014. So what this means is essentially the United States monetary base is going to stop growing at the same rate it's been growing. And this has been sending the markets into a pretty volatile state. Gold and silver are slumping deeply. Gold is at its lowest since September 2010, with a slide today of 6.5%, leaving it under $1,300 an ounce. I mean, silver is just continuing to plummet. They're down 35% on the year. European stocks are at their lowest in 18 months, down 3% this morning, and bond yields around the world are surging. And what this means for Canada, I mean, our stocks are slumping as gold plunges. The TSX S&P Composite went down 200 points or 1.6%, and trading volume was up over 50%. And the Canadian dollar is also down, as you know, this signals that the United States currency is going to stop being devalued by the inflation of the monetary base. The Canadian dollar is now relatively going to start lowering against the United States dollar, which is going to have an impact on our trade with the United States naturally. On a positive note for Canada, we are improving on household debt, but I guess my question for the group here is, what do you guys think? Do you guys think it's too soon to stop the quantitative easing policy? And what do you guys, more importantly, I think for all of us, what do you think this means for Canada?
I can't speak with too much authority on what the effects of the policy have been. It seems to have basically pumped up artificially the stock market to record returns this year, when none of these companies are actually having record profits. These companies are reporting, beating estimates by 1%, and then they have like a massive spike in stock price. So I think that it's great that this artificial pumping is going to go away, but I'm afraid that it's become so expected because it's been, 2.5 years or 3 years of constant purchases that all of a sudden we're going to have a relapse and go back even further than we would be if it had been a natural easing. I don't know how it's going to work out. I'm just concerned that the markets will then go back down to basically nothing again, and then we'll go back into a minor recession.
I gotta say, I agree. I mean, you look at companies like Johnson & Johnson up 29% on the 52-week scale, or P&G up 32%, or Target up 22%. I mean, these aren't reflecting their increases in earnings. This is reflecting a volatile market. Also, I agree, like, what comes up needs to come down eventually, and they can't keep expanding the monetary base forever. So this does need to happen. I do worry, like, what it's going to mean for us in Canada a little bit, depending on how much it devalues the Canadian currency relative to our biggest trading partner. But that said, I guess it's kind of something we're going to have to wait and see see how the market reacts. Right now, it's reeling, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks, people will realize that this was always coming. I don't know if it becomes more of a topic for behavioral psychology or behavioral finance rather at that point.
Well, with respect to the largest trading partner, I think we've seen over the last couple of years, one thing I think that Harper's administration will be looked upon favorably is trying to begin the discussions at the very least for opening trade with different partners. And Harper's government has been very proactive with respect to talking to the BRIC economies. How far along he gets before he's gone or whoever replaces him, that remains to be seen. But at least those discussions have begun. And obviously the way that basically the shakedown that we've seen since the Americans have hit their trouble, we've come to realize that I think even on the most macro level scales, diversification is important. And if this entire process has made us a little less reliant on the United States, but also open to looking at trade elsewhere, I think it's probably a net positive and a net benefit for us, and maybe even a net positive for everybody involved, including the states. I think the change in perception is probably important, and it was probably required.
Yeah, I would agree that Harper's done a great job of trying to open up trade both in the East and in the West. I know trade has been a hot issue in Europe. I'm not sure that things are going to go through there, but he has been trying to put forward a NAFTA-like free trade agreement with the EU, which would be great for Canada and would also be great for the EU itself as well. I know he's put a big focus on China, so huge credit to him for that. Anyhow, back to Connor, moving on.
All right, G with an interesting piece on Dolce & Gabbana. What's going on over there?
Interesting news. On the flip side, not as serious as what Alex got into, but Dolce & Gabbana, I'm sure you all know them, D&G, they basically got sent to prison for 1 year and 8 months, and they've been asked to pay a $500,000 euro fine, not dollar, euro, and that's because of tax fraud. So essentially what they did was they set up an offshoot company in Luxembourg, didn't tell the Italian government about this, and it resulted in fraud of up to 40.4 million euros. And now they have to pay for it. The question I have to you guys is, how is this going to impact the brand? People out there say that it's not going to impact the brand much because this sort of thing happens, but it's such complex tax fraud. How did they not tell the Italian government about this offshoot company, and how did all this happen? And to be such a high-end luxury brand and do something of this stature, I don't know. To me, it's like, I don't know if I really ever want to trust Dolce & Gabbana ever again.
I think if D&G are doing time, we're getting street cred now. We're talking about brand metamorphosis. just became legit to wear D&G.
I mean, first off, I wouldn't want to look that good going to prison. Second, I think this will definitely impact their brand. There's definitely going to be those who don't like this and have their criticisms. But I'm pretty sure the majority of D&G's target market is the wealthy,
who probably have
offshore
banks
everywhere. So I mean, if anything, maybe it could solidify their position. But I'm not sure. Like, what do you guys think?
I think the one thing that first came to my mind is that Italians are used to scandal, and they're not going to overblow this. And I thought about North America, what would be the impact? And I think that maybe it's just I'm cynical. I feel like almost no one is going to be like, oh, a large corporation was funneling money to a legal tax shelter in a country. The only thing that was surprising that it was Luxembourg and not somewhere in the Cayman Islands. I think people are just so conditioned to expect large corporations to reach and try to avoid paying taxes. Like, I don't know if you guys heard, there was a huge controversy about Amazon basically not paying taxes or charging taxes in a ton of states because of some loose regulations between where the item originates, where the item is shipped from, and where the item is delivered to. And they're basically just charging federal taxes or to customers and paying those, but then avoiding paying state taxes in a huge amount of places. And then now they're saying they're going to add taxes to all their products because they basically got called out by a ton of states. And no one said anything. People were just like, oh, we caught them, and now we get the money back, and no one's like, I'm not going to shop at Amazon anymore.
Yeah, it's like Apple, right? Apple, what was it, 108 billion that they were hiding
in the EU?
Yeah, between like Ireland and like I don't know, somewhere in that little channel of water between Ireland and Great Britain's mainland.
It's just a little pot of gold. That's all it is.
So, yeah, it's just I think people have gotten conditioned to stealing, and I think that's sad, but I think it's true.
Yeah, I personally believe it's just gonna blow over. They're probably gonna get bail and get pulled out because they're gonna find a loophole in the system. Probably pay off a few Italian officials, and next thing you know, everything's good to go. So that's my take on it.
I wonder if they were really good, they could spin this into an ad campaign like, you know, risky, dangerous, don't care, you play by your own rules kind of thing, which they already have for some of their lines.
Dolce & Gabbana, danger. Like, you can see colognes coming out of this.
Yeah, like
Break the rules.
Break the rules.
maybe like something called like a cell block D. Like,
will a 20-month prison stint rekindle their romance? That's what I'm wondering too. They might get back together by the end of this.
Maybe orange jumpsuits will make its way on the runway next September or something. You know, their big fashion show. We'll see. All right, so Man of Steel just opened up on the weekend, and I've got to say, this was a tough movie for me to review. I had really mixed emotions about it, and I kind of like to think that I have a decent understanding of Superman, how he came to be, but I've got to say, it didn't come at one single point. It was, you know, watching different movies, talking with different people, and I've got to say about this movie did an excellent job explaining where Superman came from, how he came to be. It was very clear, very distinct part of the movie. The movie opens up with Superman's parents, so that's Jor-El, who's Russell Crowe, and Lara, are on the dying planet Krypton, working quickly to get Kal-El, that's his Kryptonian name, we also know him as Superman, Kal-El, aka Clark Kent and Superman off the planet. Meanwhile, the military commander Zod is stopped while trying to perform a coup on the Kryptonian government. Kal-El escapes just in time, sent to Earth before Krypton explodes. Through flashbacks throughout the movie, we see the upbringing of Clark by his Kansas farming parents, the Kents, until we are eventually led to the 33-year-old version of Clark, who's played by Henry Cavill. He grew into a man that aimed to keep his life a secret while moving between dangerous blue-collar jobs. He's Alaskan fisheries, lumber yards, those types of like very dangerous, very high-risk type jobs. And then next we're introduced to Amy Adams' character, Lois Lane. In the movie, she plays the award-winning journalist for the Daily Planet and just hell-bent on trying to get the story behind this mysterious man who sort of seems to move amongst the shadows. Clark eventually, however, finds a computer recording of his father who guides Clark to the understanding of where he came from. So after 33 years of searching, Commander Zod finally finds Superman on Earth and tells him to surrender quietly, although Zod's intentions are unclear. So before I go any further, I want to talk about another recent DC Comics superhero relaunch, and that was the Christian Bale as Batman. In my mind, that was an incredible franchise. I loved the 3 movies. People continue to talk about The Dark Knight, and they hold Heath Ledger as the Joker in such high regard. Even the 3rd movie, so The Dark Knight Rises, was a great film. And it was a great end to that sort of series. But what no one really seems to talk about or remember for that matter is Batman Begins. That was the first movie in the series. It wasn't a great movie, the plot wasn't really memorable, but it was absolutely key in allowing us to understand how Batman came to be, so that we could really fully understand and experience and enjoy the rest of the series. But where am I going with all of this? The Man of Steel is the first movie in a DC relaunch on what is a very cheesy film franchise in the 80s and 90s, very similar to what Batman was. But like Batman Begins, it wasn't an incredible movie, but I see it as being the necessary evil in helping to springboard us into what should make for inevitable second and probably third movie, which I hope to be as good, if not better, than the Batman franchise. And then just a couple final notes. Right at the end of the movie, we see a quick flash of LexCorp, which is Lex Luthor's company, that's Superman's arch nemesis, appeared on the side of a truck. So we can be sure that Lex Luthor was bound to make an appearance in some sort of future film. From the critiques I read, people really seem to be concerned that Superman felt too alien and they missed the human charm that Christopher Reeves offered. Well, to that I say this movie's made for our generation, our younger generation. We want to see the darker, more serious side of the world of superheroes. The cheesiness and even lack of computer animation that the old series rode on holds no place in today's movie world. I saw this movie in the Ultra AVX 3D and was not disappointed. It was worth every penny. Give it an 8 out of 10. Definitely recommend seeing it in theaters.
Yeah, I absolutely think that, being an intergalactic orphan seems like something that would come with a certain degree of suffering. So I think that, keeping the movie a little bit more serious and like keeping Clark Kent from being, happy-go-lucky, skipping along the street, I think works for me. I haven't seen the movie. I was curious, did they give more of a backstory to the end of Krypton than, is traditionally given? Because normally it's and the planet Krypton was doomed. But like, there's never like a what happened.
No, that's what I mean. Like, you
really
can have never heard of Superman before, which is probably unlikely that no one's heard of Superman, and come out completely understanding the Kryptonian race, what their planet was, how Superman eventually came to Earth, even why Earth was a key location, and that was obviously the yellow sun.
I like that.
So great movie for avid fans of superheroes or someone who has just, I don't know.
I'm going tonight. Actually,
so yeah, do it.
Funny showing. I definitely think that's a smart idea for them to give the full picture as well, to actually cover everything to go do with Superman instead of taking it for granted that everyone knows who Superman is.
Yeah,
it's not fair to think like that anymore, and it's not good business for them as movie producers to assume everyone knows who their main character is. And to actually build up a character from the ground up like that, I think is the right way to go.
And that's why I brought up Batman. Think how successful that was. The first one, it was, Ra's al Ghul wasn't very clear, but they brought it all together so well by the third movie that I don't know. I think they did a great job that way. I think they can do it again.
I think the thing that you've seen, and maybe the mainstream didn't appreciate before, is how deep these characters can actually become. Batman series was an excellent example. That's a very deep and dark character. Superman, I think, tends to get played off somewhat trivially because of the nature of the character, and the early Christopher Reeve movies didn't really help with decreasing levity. But this is if anybody's watched Smallville, that was a great series, I thought, that really explored how deep this character can become and the different types of forces that you can look at, the kind of pull that the character has, psychological battles, and how he needs to adapt and conform to his newfound society. I think there's a lot of depth that you can work with in Superman. So I know I said last week I was really excited to see it. I haven't seen it yet, and probably going either tonight or tomorrow night. I'm really pumped.
You have surprised you haven't seen it.
I know.
I'm going to go see it for the second time tonight. I think it's an amazing movie. Just the one comment I was going to say, though, about the LexCorp thing. I hope they bring Gene Hackman back to be Lex Luthor.
He made it terrible, Lex Luthor.
It would be absolutely hilarious. But Otis Berg. The thing I will say about the movie overall is sometimes I forget that Superman is an alien. And I think that's kind of crazy to say, but I sometimes forget he's an alien. And in this movie, they really make you realize he is an alien. He's not from around here. Mm-hmm. And even though he looks just like everyone else, people actually are like, you're an alien and we're going to treat you differently because you're not the same as us. And it's like, you actually feel a lot different about the character seeing this movie than you would if you'd seen any of the older ones.
Yeah. And growing up, one of my biggest problems with Superman was how easy everything came to him. Oh, I can't be shot. I can't be hurt. I can run through giant skyscrapers and still live. And I always found that a problem. That everything was too easy for him. He never had to work or earn anything. And with this movie, he's had to. It sort of really demonstrates how much he has to wait and be patient and let people decide that they're willing to accept what he can offer.
Hey man, he overcame being an intergalactic orphan. Okay, this guy's had a hard life.
Alex brings up a valid point. Alex has too. They both bring up a valid point. Being an orphan's not easy.
Mind you, he didn't know he was an orphan until he was like 12, so not that tough. All right, Ari, what's going on with the NBA right now?
What's going on? Game 7 of the NBA Finals, that's what's going on. For those who don't know, if you've been living under a rock, Game 6 2 nights ago was one of the greatest NBA Finals games possibly in the history of the NBA Finals. In a nutshell, Spurs were up 5 fourth quarter with 28 seconds left. Ray Allen 3, and then that tied the game and took them to overtime. And a few Chris Bosh blocks later, he pulled away with the victory. Kind of one of the most epic collapses, I think, in recent history. They had the yellow tape out surrounding the court to signify a Spurs win with 28 seconds left, and the Heat pulled out the victory. Pretty crazy. So looking at Game 7 tonight, you kind of wonder, like, after a breakdown like that, the Spurs have the mental wherewithal to come back and win Game 7? I would say, the prevailing notion would be no, just because the chips are stacked against them. LeBron's playing absurdly. Chris Bosh is picking up his pace. But anything's possible. And I don't know. What do you guys think? Do Spurs have a chance?
Well, I
tonight?
noticed LeBron wasn't wearing his signature headband. Does that have anything to do with?
We have confirmed he will wear the headband.
Is he wearing it? Okay, good.
It is confirmed. The biggest story in Western news. He's wearing the headband.
But if it falls off, he will have a discussion with the headband whether he should put it on or not to continue the game.
What we're really going to have to wait and see is what color the headband is. No, I think it's good to hear. I didn't see the game, but it's good to hear LeBron did pull it out because he was not playing well 2 games ago. But that said, I think even if they did crumble the Spurs, I think when you guys got guys like Ginobili and like Tim Duncan on your team, you have some rocks there who have the mental fortitude to bounce back from something like that.
If there's one team that's going to be able to have the mental wherewithal to come back, it is the Spurs. This is a team that's been there before. And I said this last week. I don't expect them to wither like the Pacers did in Game 7, where it felt like they had their opportunities in the Eastern Conference Final, and by the time they got to the end of that series, there was nothing left. I think if there's a team that's going to be able to gut one out on the road, it's a Popovich coach team, and it's a team that has a lot of guys who've been there before. But really, in a Game 7, anything can happen.
My only concern is, I have 2 concerns. One, is Bosh going to continue playing like a Bosh? Like, right now, he's just ridiculous. Like, last game, it may not come up on the stat sheet, but he was altering shots. He was controlling he was doing what Chris Anderson normally is forced to do to come in and do, control the paint, block shots. And then he went on the offensive end, and he was drawing away people from the basket. He was hitting a couple shots here and there. If he plays like that, like I've said before, Chris Bosh he's just lower enough skill than Wade and James to get open and for people to forget his skill level, and he can completely make the difference. And I think if this game is close again, I think there's going to be a lot of controversy about refereeing, and I hope it doesn't get close. I hope it's like one team wins by 7 or 8, a clear-cut victory. And if I had to give an MVP based on last game, I'd give it to Chris Bosh, although I know he'll never win it. It's going to go to LeBron James because he's averaging, 30 in the last 3 games?
Yeah, not playing 42 minutes a game.
It's a little bit of endurance,
Yeah.
At least so Popovich should feel like he doesn't need to rest Parker anymore. Because I think the last couple of games, you've noticed he's been really hesitant to play him big workloads at a time because of his hamstring. Now, what does it matter? Right? You've got 1 game left no matter what. So I think that'll make a difference for San Antonio. The other thing, too, it's pretty obvious to me that the big 3 can't work for Miami going forward. I really believe that. I think when you see them put out their best lineup, LeBron and Wade have a tough time trying to discern whose team this really is. And I think you see Wade's best basketball when LeBron isn't the focal point. And likewise, I think you see LeBron's best basketball when Wade isn't involved. And I think Bosh can work with either guy. I don't think the 3 of them can work together long term.
That's an interesting point because I actually think the problem of the big 3, while Chris Bosh did have a good Game 6, is Chris Bosh. I think his lack of rebounding, his toughness, it's lacking. And I think the Heat could use a guy. I know this might be a little crazy, but a guy like Dwight Howard, he needs to leave LA. He needs to leave that big market. Miami's a middle market team. He needs to play alongside guys like LeBron and Wade who aren't selfish, who aren't Kobe's, right? But I think they need to go after a legit big man and try to trade Chris Bosh while his stock is still somewhat high.
I'm still respecting Chris Bosh. I think you are correct, but I think you can solve the problem even cheaper than paying Dwight Howard max money. I think you can just get a big, solid defensive center because right now he's still the biggest guy on that team, and he's a scrawny. He's 6'11". Like you bring up a big center in, and he doesn't have to bang with those guys. You'll look at his numbers; they'll all improve.
And you can win titles like that. Mavericks did it with Tyson Chandler as a big man in 2011. Tyson Chandler is not an offensive dynamo, but that guy was dynamite down low all playoffs.
So just put a big guy in beside Chris Bosh. Now you have 2 towers plus. It would be amazing.
Yeah, just bring back Kareem Abdul-Jabbar while you're at it too. See if Oscar Robertson wants to play the point. Why not?
So, Pac, do we have some hockey news?
Yes, we do. We got a series again. Brent Seabrook in OT. Chicago wins 6-5 last night after out-shooting Boston 47-33. It was a crazy game last night. We've seen very tight defensive games the entire series. And then last night, all of a sudden, the two goalies decided not to show up. Rask a little less. Rask got really unlucky on a lot of goals. Crawford was terrible. And then these two teams combined for 11 goals in Game 4 last night. But the most important thing, the series is 2-2. Going back to Chicago, now it's a best of 3 for the Stanley Cup. And for the people who were saying that the games weren't exciting enough or they weren't offensive enough, I think Game 4 should hopefully shut some people up for at least a couple nights anyways.
Now, if we watch the trend with Tuukka Rask, though, any night where he gives up 4, well, never really 5, but gives up a lot of goals, the next couple games is usually solid.
Oh, he's dynamite.
And so it's going to be tough for Chicago to put up numbers like that again.
I would expect a much tighter game in Game 5. The other thing, too, not just the goalies played poorly, but it was sloppy. I mean, you saw a lot of odd man rushes that we didn't see in the first 3 games, a lot of defensemen making irresponsible pinches. It's going to tighten up in the neutral zone in Game 5, but it's been a lot of fun. This, for all the acrimonious beginnings of this season with the lockout and everything, I think people have pretty much put that off to the side. Even I'll begrudgingly admit that I've forgotten about how angry I was during the lockout. This has been a great playoffs, and it's been a great end of the season. It'll be exciting. Game 5's on Saturday night at the United Center. Madhouse on Madison. Chicago's got 2 games at home now to win the Cup, so I still like my Blackhawks in 7 pick.
You did call it. You know what? You did call it about a month ago. You said it was going to be Chicago. You got a good feeling about it, so.
I'm cheering for the Bruins. I'm an active Pat Kane disliker. Anyone who has racing stripes and a mullet is not going to be my friend. But I don't believe that Boston can win 2 games, 2 out of 3, with 2 of the games being in Chicago. I just don't believe that can happen.
No one said the Bruins could win that game against the Leafs, Game 7, with
That's
2
true.
minutes left. So
that's true, but I do believe that it's now firmly in Chicago's corner. And what it's going to take is a mental breakdown by Corey Crawford, which is possible because basically
he did it last night.
They scored 5 goals in the exact same position. No one did anything fancy. They just shot it directly where his glove would be if he didn't move his hand, and it went in. Like if he just stood there without moving, they couldn't have scored.
He looked like JP and CB last night.
Like, he just didn't move. They don't score, and he's moving around, and they're definitely in his head. But I think even with that being said, I just don't think that they can take 2 games. Like, he'll be bad like that for 2 games. Even he has some recovery ability.
Game 5 is the big one. If Boston can steal a win on the road in Game 5, they have a chance to go back home and close it out. I think if they lose Game 5, it really becomes tough. But that'll be interesting to watch. And since I brought up JP, I just quickly mentioned, because apparently nobody's noticing, but the Jays are on an 8-game win streak.
that's nuts.
They've decided that we might be kind of good at this baseball thing. And Jose Reyes is slated to come back on Monday. Maybe the season isn't over yet.
We're closing in on 500?
We are a game below 500. The 500 watch is as intense as it's ever been.
Yeah, but what have these series matchups been like? Because I think now they're up against Baltimore again, right?
They have an ugly stretch. They've got the O's this weekend at home, and then they play the Rays and the Red Sox back-to-back on the road, and then they come back for a 4-game set against the Tigers, and Detroit's been killing everybody. So this is probably the make-or-break point of the season, this 14-game stretch.
I don't want to be a downer, but they won 8 games, 4 of them against Texas that 2 of them they really had no business winning whatsoever. Chen-Ming Wang was just, that's not expected. Then they beat up on Colorado. I could see that happening. I'm still skeptical. I refuse to say anything until I see Jose Reyes on the field. Until then, they're still 8.5 games back with no chance, in my opinion.
7.5 games back, and Texas was the AL West leader at the time of that series sweep. So I believe in Chen-Ming Wang. I believe in Dickey. I believe in Johnson. The phallic trio will bring Toronto to the promised land.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Oh yeah, can you imagine a first round where it's like, who are you guys running out as your starters? We're running out Dickey, Wang, and Johnson.
On that note, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at What's Up to Groot and like us on Facebook. If you want to contact us directly, email whatsuptogroot@gmail.com. This is What's Up to Groot signing off.
Peace out.